This Christmas, my daughter-in-law looked me right in the eye and said, "We're doing Christmas at my mom's. You can stay home." I didn't argue. I just smiled, wished them well, and booked a flight. Before I tell you how it all happened, take a moment to subscribe and comment below where you're watching from. This story might just change how you see family, love, and second chances. My name is Margaret Ellis, and I'm 65 years old. I live by myself in a cozy little house in Colorado, the same one my husband and I bought 40 years ago. Every corner of this place holds a memory. The walls are covered with old family photos, and around the holidays, the smell of cinnamon always lingers in the air. Christmas has always been the time I looked forward to the most. It used to bring everyone together. My husband Richard passed away 8 years ago, and ever since then, the only close family I had was my son Jonathan and his wife Claire. Every Christmas, I'd go to their house with my homemade pecan pie, wrap gifts for my grandkids, and help Claire decorate. It wasn't a grand celebration, but it made me feel included, like I still mattered. But this year felt different right from the start. Claire had been distant for months, and even Jonathan wasn't calling as much as he used to. I kept telling myself that life gets busy and people move on. I never wanted to be the kind of mother who guilt-tripped her children into spending time with her. One week before Christmas, I called to ask what time I should come over. Claire picked up. Her voice was polite, but there was no warmth behind it. "Margaret, we're spending Christmas at my mom's this year. It'll be easier for everyone. You can stay home and relax." My heart sank, but I forced a smile, even though she couldn't see me. "Oh, I understand. That sounds nice," I whispered. She thanked me quickly and hung up. No small talk, no invitation, no "we'll miss you." After the call, I sat at my kitchen table in complete silence. The only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. I glanced around at the decorations I had already put up. Garlands on the mantel, stockings hanging neatly, the Christmas tree glowing softly in the corner. For years, I decorated for them, hoping they'd walk in and feel at home. Now everything just felt hollow. That night, I made myself a cup of tea and pulled out the old photo albums. There was Jonathan as a little boy tearing open gifts, Richard carving the turkey, Claire smiling the first year she joined our family. My eyes burned with tears, but I kept turning the pages, quietly telling myself, "It's just one Christmas. I'll be fine." But deep inside, I knew it wasn't about one holiday. It was about feeling forgotten by the very people I loved. The next morning, Jonathan called briefly. His voice was filled with guilt. "Mom, I hope you're not upset. You know how Claire's mom likes to host. It's just this year." "It's okay, sweetheart," I answered like mothers always do. "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine." When I ended the call, I looked out the window. Snow was drifting down gently, painting everything white. I watched the neighborhood kids build snowmen and heard their laughter echoing outside. For the first time, I felt like a stranger in my own life. Everyone else had somewhere to be, and I was just here. Later that evening, I sat by the fireplace with my cat curled up on my lap. The tree lights cast a warm glow across the room. In that quiet moment, I could almost hear Richard's voice in my mind. "You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else, Margaret. When will you start doing something for yourself?" And that's when a small thought began to grow inside me. Maybe this year didn't need to be about waiting for someone to include me. Maybe I could give myself a different kind of Christmas, one filled with peace instead of disappointment. I closed my eyes and murmured to myself, "Maybe it's time to start living for me." But I had no idea that a single moment of courage was about to change my entire Christmas and my entire life. What I didn't realize then was that this small moment of courage would lead me somewhere unexpected, a choice that would shape not only my Christmas, but the path my life was about to take. The days before Christmas crept by slowly, too slowly. The house that once echoed with laughter, chatter, and the sound of wrapping paper being torn open now felt still, like it was waiting for something that wasn't coming. I tried keeping myself busy, I baked cookies, even though I knew no one would stop by to taste them. I wrapped a few tiny presents for the neighbors' kids just so I wouldn't feel useless. But every time I walked past the family photo on the mantel, me, Richard, and little Jonathan, smiling under a Christmas tree 20 years ago, a deep ache settled in my chest. I always thought that family meant sticking together, that no matter how far life took us, the people we raised would carry us with them. But standing there in my quiet kitchen, I finally admitted the truth. Love stays, but sometimes people drift so far they forget how to see it. That evening, I tried distracting myself with holiday movies. I flipped from channel to channel, watching scenes of families reuniting, parents being surprised at the door, cheerful gatherings by glowing fireplaces. I wanted to turn it all off, but I couldn't look away. It felt like the TV was holding up a mirror, showing me everything I used to have and everything I had lost. I whispered to myself, "You're not part of anyone's story this year." That sentence hit harder than I expected. The next day, Jonathan called again. "Mom, just checking on you. Doing okay?" His voice was gentle, but rushed, like he was trying to fit me into an already full day. I smiled, even though he couldn't see me. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I've got my tree up and a good book waiting for me." He exhaled, relieved. "That's good, Mom. We'll come by after the holidays, I promise." Then I heard Claire in the background telling him they needed to leave, and a moment later, the call ended. I held the phone in my hand long after the line went silent. My heart felt strange, full because I loved my son, but empty because he no longer seemed to love me with the same closeness he once had. At least, not in the way he used to. Later that night, I went upstairs to put away a box of Christmas decorations I didn't have the energy to use. While sliding it onto the shelf, I noticed an old suitcase tucked in the corner, covered in dust. It was the same one Richard and I had used for our first and only trip to Europe. We had saved for years for that journey. Paris, Rome, Vienna. I brushed the dust off the worn handle and felt a small smile pull at my lips. Memories rushed back. Our laughter, our careful planning, the little moments that felt so big at the time. I could almost hear Richard's voice saying, "See, Margaret, the world isn't as big as it looks. You just have to be brave enough to walk into it." That memory stayed with me long after I put the suitcase back. It followed me downstairs. It followed me through dinner. It followed me into bed. By the time I closed my eyes, one idea was buzzing so loudly in my mind that I could barely sleep. And by the next morning, that tiny idea would turn into a decision that would send me thousands of miles from home and straight into a story I never expected to live. The next morning, I made a fresh pot of coffee and sat down with my laptop. On a whim, I typed in "Christmas trips for seniors" just to see what popped up. The screen filled with dozens of bright, festive images. Twinkling lights, bustling Christmas markets, and travelers wrapped in cozy scarves and smiles everywhere. One particular trip grabbed my attention immediately. A Christmas tour through Europe, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. It was leaving in 3 days. My heart started beating fast. It was completely unexpected, a little wild, and nothing like me. But deep inside, a voice whispered, "Go for it." For the first time in years, I felt a rush of real excitement. I filled out the form, typed in my card details, and clicked "Book Now." My hands shook a little, but I couldn't stop smiling. I realized I wasn't waiting for anyone else to decide if I could be happy. I was finally giving myself permission. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of nervous anticipation. I pulled the suitcase from the closet and began packing carefully. Scarves, sweaters, Richard's old travel journal, and the tiny gold locket he had given me on our 20th anniversary. I didn't tell anyone about my plans, not even Jonathan. This wasn't about anger or spite. It was about freedom. For the first time in years, I was doing something purely for me. When the day finally came, I arrived at the airport. Families hugged, couples held hands, and children laughed as they waited to board. I felt a flicker of loneliness, but I quickly shook it off. This was my new beginning. On the plane, I found my seat next to a tall man with silver hair and warm, kind eyes. He smiled at me. "Heading home or heading out?" he asked. I returned the smile with, "Heading somewhere new," I said. He chuckled softly. "Good answer." His name was Stephen Harper. As the plane soared into the sky, we began chatting about where we are from, the places we'd been, and the people we'd loved. By the time we landed, it felt as though I had known him forever. There was a calmness about him, steady and honest, that made it easy to open up. Stephen shared that he was a retired professor, traveling alone since losing his wife a few years ago. I told him about Richard, about Jonathan, and about the hollow feeling that had led me to take this trip. He listened, not with pity, but with real understanding. That night, as we arrived at our hotel in Munich and soft snow began to fall, I realized something remarkable. My daughter-in-law had told me to stay home, assuming I had nowhere else to be. Yet here I was, under a winter sky that sparkled like it was waiting just for me. In that moment, I understood something important. The world was bigger than I thought, and it was all waiting for me to explore. And I had only just begun. Little did I know, the next days of this trip would not only change how I spent Christmas, but also change my life in ways I could never have imagined. The first few days of the trip felt completely new, like stepping into a world I had only imagined. Everywhere I looked, there were sparkling lights, cheerful holiday music, and people smiling as they hurried past. At first, all that happiness felt unfamiliar, almost overwhelming. But gradually, it began to settle into me, warming a part of me I had forgotten. Our tour group was small, about 20 people, mostly retirees like me looking for a different way to spend Christmas. We explored the cozy Christmas markets in Munich, wandered past historic cathedrals in Salzburg, and shared stories over steaming cups of mulled wine. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't sitting alone at home. I was part of something, part of a group, part of life again. Stephen, the man who had sat next to me on the plane, seemed to appear wherever I went. He had a calm, steady presence that made others feel at ease. He was tall, with a dry human sense of humor, and a gentle smile that creased the corners of his eyes. We talked about everything. Our children, our late spouses, our regrets, and even our fears. He told me how he used to travel with his wife every winter, and how quiet and empty his house had been since she passed. When I told him I knew that silence all too well, he didn't offer sympathy. He just looked at me with understanding, and that look said more than words ever could. That night, our group had dinner at a small restaurant overlooking the snow-dusted streets of Vienna. Twinkling lights hung in every window, and somewhere nearby, a violin played softly. As the waiter poured our wine, Stephen lifted his glass toward me. "To second chances," he said with a smile. I returned the toast with a smile. "And to finding joy where you least expect it." After dinner, we strolled slowly back to the hotel, enjoying the crisp night air. Snowflakes drifted gently around us. For a little while, I forgot the pain of my empty house, the sting of Claire's words, and the ache of feeling left out. For the first time in years, I was living in the moment instead of waiting for something to happen. The next morning, I woke early and decided to take a walk before breakfast. The streets were quiet, and the air smelled of roasted chestnuts and coffee. I paused on a bench near a frozen fountain and watched the city slowly wake up. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Jonathan. "Hey, Mom. Just wanted to check in. Hope you're doing okay. We're having dinner at Claire's mom's tonight. The kids miss you." I read it twice. My first instinct was to reply, "I'm fine, just at home resting." But then I looked out at the snow-covered rooftops, heard laughter spilling from a nearby cafe, and thought, no, not this time. Instead, I snapped a picture of the glowing city square and sent it with the message, "Merry Christmas from Vienna, having a wonderful time." Within seconds, the typing bubbles appeared, and then stopped. I smiled quietly, putting the phone away. Later that day, our group visited a Christmas market in Salzburg. The stalls were lined with handmade ornaments, candles, and fresh pastries. I picked up a small wooden angel to hang on my tree next year, a simple reminder of the Christmas that had changed everything. Stephen found me at one of the stalls and handed me 2 steaming mugs of cocoa. "Looks like you needed this," he said with a grin. We sat together on a bench talking for hours as snow drifted around us. That evening, our group gathered in the town square to watch a choir perform. Candles flickered in every hand as silent night filled the air. Stephen stood close, his hand brushing mine. For a moment, something stirred in my heart, something I hadn't felt since Richard passed. It wasn't just affection. It was the quiet, steady peace that comes from being truly seen. Later, back at the hotel, I scrolled through the photos I had taken. One showed Stephen and me by a Christmas tree, both of us laughing as someone from the tour tried to capture the moment. Without overthinking, I shared it on social media with a short caption. "Sometimes the best company is found when you stop waiting for an invitation." I didn't expect much, but within minutes, notifications started pouring in. Friends and former coworkers wrote things like, "You look so happy, Margaret," and "Good for you, you deserve this." Then came messages from my family. Jonathan texted, "Mom, where are you? Who's that man?" Followed quickly by, "Please call me. Claire won't stop asking questions." Even Claire wrote, "Wow, I didn't realize you were traveling. You look different. Is that someone special?" I stared at the messages for a long time, then turned off my phone and gazed at the city lights below. For years, I had waited for my family to show me I mattered, but right then, I realized I didn't need anyone's approval to live my life. I had given so much to everyone else. Now it was time to take something back. My happiness. That night, I fell asleep with a calm heart. I didn't know what awaited me when I returned home, but I knew one thing: I wasn't the same woman who had been told to stay home. I had found something more powerful than pity or apology. I had rediscovered my courage. And that courage would change everything. Little did I know, this Christmas in Europe was only the beginning. What I would discover next would not only change how I spent Christmas, but also change my life in ways I could never have imagined.